Fair use disclaimer shown and approved. And now it's on you to go and get your doctors and ask them what, because this would be one where the doctors might get involved. You might have to go and say, what are we looking at here? You know what? I didn't write down anything today. What's all this? Did I do a bunch of pictures? We're going to have to look at them before we go to the tabs, and we're going to be talking about psilocybin therapy. Huh. You know, it's been more than the usual, like 12 hours. So this should be a pretty good show. Show, ministry, teaching. This is the last Roman road, Manchaser, as RJ would call it. He knows that there's a town in Wisconsin he calls Manchaser. But this is all they saved, and 200 years ago, and they said, well, let's save it, charge a little money. Is that the way to go? It's going that way. Yeah. Oh, these are the temperatures that are coming to you. Progressive moment is over. Okay, that's old news. Look at, even John Levy now has mentioned that's supposed to be a bad closed caption of meltology. He just wanted to talk about it. And he said, I saw in a burning fire something that looks like a brick. So maybe the trees, when they burn, turned to brick. And the ancient buildings and mountains of old were fantasy castles all over the world. Are you kidding me? If that's the level that some people want to descend to, go ahead. But pretty much we forget, a lot of this stuff, a lot of times we kind of write it off as, well, they kind of deserve it because we're busy. We're the conservatives. We've been taught by, wait a minute, Rush Limbaugh? Who are those Newt Gingrich and other people, Ronald Reagan, people that convert to Catholicism or deal with astrologers? And, so unless they had somebody with the body cam, they wouldn't have cared. This would have just been, the police can do whatever they want. He probably assaulted them, instead of realizing they beat and kicked this guy to death. But they're probably on the right side of politics. Their vote matters, their union matters, and you know what happens when you defund them. And now the times are changing, baby. We might touch a little bit on how long has this been going on? It was exposed by Gary Webb that Ronald Reagan and those guys funded the Contras, and I was at Christian Liberty Academy and Church of Christian Liberty when, we were bringing in people, we were raising money, we got to fight those Sandinistas. I think Ortega came to or one of his guys, I think it was Ortega, raising money for the Contras, because they were fighting commies, but they were selling dope, crack, started an epidemic that put so many people in prison. And, look at Montel Williams, the vice president used to date this guy on her way up. And, he would introduce, how Coke in America. You look up how the CIA connections, this is one of their big clips. But again, conservatives couldn't take that serious back then. They were lying their ass off just to embarrass, avenge me, Ronald Reagan, right? But this guy's there like, holy cow, they did it. And Victor Schauberger is going to come up today. This is I think it's a computer recently started in Espanol. This means open-minded. Look at that. Allegedly they could trace his, feudal life of his family being in charge of the local lord's forest back to 1230. So he learned all about nature. He's a self-educated man. But he didn't really invent it, because they're finding things that, this has been going on for quite a while, and it works. And I don't think Satan wants me to study it, but I think Jesus is going to overrule. So did you know Amsterdam is a type of a whirlpool? Kind of. The waters that surround it, they control it through dikes and polders. Is that correct? But you can kind of see it swirling in on itself there. At least they thought it was. And, we always go back to, those guys in the 1400s, they were so good. These guys were in the 1800s. And they were still pretty darn good, and they were still dressing pretty darn funny. I don't know how much of this we're going to look at, but I just wanted to let you know that these guys are not those guys that go back to the 1400s. And this video, I think, is trying to, another one of that open-minded. They just came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, boom, he's showing it. He's popping it. It's what really is the difference. I know Gulf of Tonkin's going to come up. I mean, how good were they? I mean, were they really that good? Oh, yeah. Okay. Some people think that they have to be humans that got frozen in time or 3D printed. But some of those people back they did turn humans into stone, and people have turned into stone, and there's diseases that turn people into stones. I've had kidney stones. Zero fun. Zero fun. Don't look at me like that. Oh, it's a straight nose thing. Keep the statues that have the straight noses. Hey, that's a real statue. Well, both of them are in a way, but this is more of a sculpture. It's hollow. This is probably, maybe that's got some hollow spots too. Uh-oh, broken nose. Another broken nose. I can't tell they're not supposed to be honkies. I couldn't really tell. Well, that girl looks like a honky. Just broke her nose just to be sure. Not honky enough. Like, you got to be pretty honky to be considered honky. Once again, open-minded, the new guy. Remember, I only started a little, I only have so much time in it. I'm not leaning back on Tartary and stuff like that. Oh, is China Tartary? No. What's going on here? I've seen that before. What is that? Is that America? I don't think so. Kind of looks like it. National. The national for the Phrygian cap Jacobian wears. It's not like, does that say Texas? No. It's a screenshot. Hey, It's not going to be 4K every day. Tartaria. Supposedly there was a time when you could just put Tartaria in the title and you could get 100,000 views, according to some people. There it is again. This figure shows that it was taken from the ceiling and in no way reflects real events. That's what the interpretation of 08. You see, there, I guess during the siege and blockade of Leningrad, there's a lot of things that don't add up that the computer found, and this one's allowed to show. Like there was supposed to be 148,000 shells that bombarded the city, yet they got their materials to keep making tanks and put up the fight somehow. And here's proof that they launched all those shells because one of their artillery shells hit that pillar and made a scar in it. Now, we've seen what it did to other towns, and this is just a big excuse for, because Leningrad is St. Petersburg, and you know what St. Petersburg is. It's Magic City. And this can be proven because it's an auto-generated Autobot. Its voice is very funny. Maybe we'll look at it. So what's going on here? Something no historians, are they letting the cat out of the bag? You bet they are, because they just don't care anymore, because the wide road, the highway to hell, is, there's no pushing the people off of it. Right now, I'm trying to get people to understand, about what this psilocybin thing is going to be. I better check and make sure that I got my volume and everything okay. Right. So my main thesis on this is going to be, if there's people out there like Paul Stropes, who's claimed that when he was on mushrooms or LSD or something, he saw demons. Well, nobody ever saw that for the thousands of years that people have done that. But all of a sudden he's going like, if you take these things, oh my goodness, you'll see a demon. And then, well, so a lot of other people are saying that now. Theron is like, I can't listen to Paco because he's taken mushrooms. And we all know that makes you crazy. Okay. It's like the last hope for people like my son and some of my friends and the veterans. And the proof is there that it does so much better, according to some doctors, but they haven't decided to argue about it, although they've known it under their new evidence since 1990. They're wrong. The wide road is wide open for you if that's where you want to end up. Have I shown all the pictures, or am I just ranted-y doo-dying? Oh, so allegedly, this is the legend, according to the computer. This is a legend of how Russia won the war. Everybody rallied together. Do you think they're building on that right now in Russia? I do. That these people have been holding us down long enough. They keep calling them Nazis. It's a continuation of the same war to them. And why wouldn't it be? Was Bessemer a liar? Where did all this steel come from for the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s? And if they invented it, why was it such a dangerous job that only these guys could do it? And they could make, iron, finely supercast steel. Let's see what this is. This was contested when the real pool of Bethesda was discovered in North Jerusalem. You see what they can do with your modern stuff once they found it and claimed that fake Israel over there that the dispensationalists love? Tower of Siloam fell on, we're going to read that Bible verse, I think, And then there was also the pool of Siloam. Remember, there was an angel that stirred the water. The Lord, our Messiah, anointed, Emmanuel. when the guy, he said, nobody can put me in the water when the water stirs. Lord didn't say, well, that's just an old myth. Oh, who cares if this guy could walk this far in one day? Way to go, old dude. I guess it says he was an old guy and he made it with 2 hours to spare. These ditches and everything else. Interesting. I don't think it was a waste of time watching it. I really don't. So the modern Olympic marathon, I guess we'll look at that. How did it end up being, what is it, 26.22 miles on April 1896, a male-only race was the first modern marathon. And of course, the computer at Wikipedia had a male-only race like a woman would have won. Like there's ever been a woman who win a marathon race. But, once the programming is there, it takes a little while. Criminalization of psychedelics via their classification as Schedule I substance is inconsistent with over 70 years of scientific and medical research and was contrary to all available evidence at the time. Let's think back in the 60s after the 58 reset with the Constitution rewrite, the founding of DARPA, NASA, and STEM. Would they want people to have clear, expanded minds if that's how it really works according to, I guess, 70 years of scientific and medical research and all the evidence at the time that was dismissed? Who profits? Who made the money? Was it your father, my father, your cousin, my brother? No. It was the same 1% or 3%, however you want to count it. But hey, they just rose to the top because they're better capitalists. No, they didn't. Volunteers recently who received doses of psilocybin experienced no serious side effects. And it says experienced changes in mood and perception. Some is a very vague thing, but no negative effects on cognitive or emotional functioning. They experienced the mood and perception and, no negative effects. They didn't go crazy. They didn't start flipping out. We remember the MK Ultra video of the girl who was snuck LSD and she goes, no, I just see the stars more clearly. The lights are shining. Everything seems more real. Well, they don't want that. So they put out the Timothy Learys and the other ones to go like, yeah, it's for great sex. That's what it's for. Let's party. Well, I wouldn't know what somebody on the wide road's mind is thinking when they do something that is supposed to be, done with intent. And I would think the intent would always be to please God. So once again, I was curious about the marathon. That the 26.22 miles is the number they established in 1960. We'll find out. But it also is something that now has been clarified updated as of like 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And it deals with state attorney general will certify and meets the requirements for this certification if the attorney general determines that the state has established a mechanism for the appointment of counsel for indigent prisoners under sentence of death. I bet those guys better turn off their webcams or they're going to get caught possibly kicking people to death. That'd be one way of saving we're saving the taxpayer money because they were sentenced to death and I don't know. It's just, is the 2-6, is that just me again? But then again, and I am me, the one that the Lord used to bring this whole thing, this 1,000-year reign, and to, you know, have to bring up the Flint water crisis. Remember how the conservatives, we wrote that off. Turns out from 2016 to 2018, it turns out that it was a racketeering case, the architects of the bond deal, and they were going to do it, but nope. Organized crime group, widespread, set to implicate additional state officials who played a role in poisoning Flint. But I remember I didn't care one rat's ass about Flint because that was just a lefty thing, because that guy Michael Moore made a movie about it. And anything he made a movie about, conservatives hated. That's why 9/11, when it came out, he was one of the first guys to show all the proof that 9/11 was an inside job. But people like myself said, well, if he's for it, I'm against it. You know it's true. You did it too. Some of you. So anyway, the write-up on the left is like their version of how a brain is working. These are the people that are pro-psilocybin mushroom therapy. And this is their common brain. I don't know where they got that picture, but you'll see it again. That's the thumbnail. So that means it's time to go to look at the tabs that I have pulled up. Zoe, who cares about a Zoe character from Mount Targon and her teachers suffered constant headaches trying to educate her, but she was naughty, but I'll bet she ended up saving the day. That's not it. I mean, come on. What? Please, no, I meant I still can't find it for like even under Zoe Greek life, and they're still just shoving first female Greek name was Zoe, meaning life, and it's only from this country, but that's not what I was looking for. Zoe is like the ether. It's like it's one of the words in the Bible for Jesus is the Zoe. The way, the truth, he's the life. You can be kind of more specific, but anyway, we got it, right? We're right there. I have it pulled up. Why'd I leave a tab open? To look, I guess, at my algorithm. Let's see what's provided here. Drones are watching you. Hey, Professor Simon, he's wise and smart. I wish he was a flat earther and believed the Bible. Oh no, a frenzied land grab? That's just crazy, right? Oh, it looks like the Gulf of Tonkin was the last thing I was watching, maybe. Hey, what's up with the Basque Celts in America? No way. Oh no, that there was a terrible plane crash. Hey, surprise, surprise, they added 700 years? No, 1,000 years. 1,000 years. It's always going to be 1,000. It's not, if you could say, here's 700 of the 1,000, that would be smarter. But then again, some of the other guests you have on, this guy looks a lot smarter. At least his face isn't covered with tattoos. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Oh, he's got a good excuse. No, not really. He's got something to repent from. He can't be saved. I'm not sure that's teaching material. Well, you don't like that? Oh, so that's it. Huh? I hate these computerized, thumbnails. That is pretty. This is somebody that I found interesting, and he's got an interesting style.
Say that some of their attempts were not always successful, and whilst we're obviously going to be having a laugh at some of their Well, that's a pretty tasty bit there, and the colour is still really nice, isn't it? After 1800 years, it's the grand dining room here.
Yeah, he edits all these videos. I think him and maybe anyway, he's got like less than 6,000, but smooth. I'm not saying that you could do it better, but a lot of you could probably do it as good. But it would mean not watching videos all day and night.
So this would have been a fine mosaic here at Chedworth Roman Villa, but as you can see, when the roof collapsed, whenever that was, the mosaic was smashed to bits.
You could still do a lot with that.
I mean, sub-Roman period, I mean early medieval period, is surprising. What's that? Skills being passed on another 2 or 3 generations? Astonishing. Anyhow, whilst not qualifying as a 100% rubbish mosaic, it wasn't great apparently. And according to the experts, our incompetent craftsman has got them all in the wrong order. He's added bar.
Yeah, they had to do a lot of reworking, and he's like, everybody knows it. But you guys can do this.
He is creating.
It's great to have Christians do great videos, you know. So let's look at what is Zoe. You still here? Am I still sharing? Looks like it. Meaning to live. So Jesus leads to life. Ooh, 7. Hey, I have that pulled up. That's in the Sermon on the Mount. Something leads to life. Uh-oh. You better enter life crippled than it's that whole, you know, life. You want to enter into life really bad. How can you attain eternal life? In the New Testament, Zoe refers to life in its fullest sense, encompassing both physical and spiritual dimensions. It is often used to describe the eternal life that is granted through faith, that gift of grace in Jesus Christ, Emmanuel. Characterized by a relationship with God. And let's face it, a lot of Aramaic, but did he really speak Aramaic or was it Greek? Eternal life. So, did I have that twice? Anyway, there's more lives. Let's go to I want to make sure I do cover some of the other lives. So let's. This is that one where it's talking about considering the cunning and malice of Satan and the weakness and depravity of men's heart. It is not possible, but that there should be offenses. This is that verse that talks about, you know, if your eye offends you, cut it out. Now I'm looking for, I guess we could just type it in and that. So we'll see if that is. We'll look up a couple of these, but we won't stick around on it forever. So let's look at this interlinear and see if, yep, that's Zoan. So that's not the same life. John 12:25. Is this a Zoan? No, this is your psyche. Okay, because this is the other one I was looking for. 41 occurrences out of 104. They sought the child's life. the soul. So this is the, don't worry about food, worry about who can take your soul if you can, who can destroy it. And wow. He who has found his life shall lose it unless you're living it for the right way. Soul, life, inner being, vital breath. Yeah, I know. I wish that RJ was here too, and we could get to the bottom of this and keep it in order and keep it on time. I'm telling you, we'll get it. There's three types now. There's the soul, there's your mind, there's your Zoe life. So what kind of life should we live? You know it. I know it. But we've got these verses pulled up. So at least we found 2 out of the 3. And I've got a lot to do in only a limited time of good weather, clear sunshine, where it's going to be up around, near 40 today. Zoe, the new life. Let's keep moving on here. So here is that, a little bit of breakdown, history with no chaser.
On top of that, when you talk about mass incarceration, laws were passed that completely eliminated any type of judge's discretion. I mean, there's tons of things.
So, around the same time they were classifying something that the evidence shows goes against everything that was true, they classified mushrooms in with cocaine and heroin, which I think, if used properly, should probably be legal and everything, and it's the mafia that's making the money off of it, sexing it up, whatever they do. But it ended up, again, causing people mass incarcerations, making money, us against them. They're the bad guys. We don't do that, but we were doing it. They were doing it. They were extracting and drinking adrenochrome and feeding this into our diminished mind.
Things to name. The initial artwork of the series was a silhouette of a man smoking a crack pipe over the CIA seal. This artwork sparked way too much controversy, so they then removed it. His series reported that in addition to waging a proxy war for the U.S. government against Nicaragua's revolutionary Sandinista government in the 1980s.
So, he's young. You can tell that's Santanista.
Elements of the CIA-backed Contra rebels were also involved in trafficking cocaine to the U.S.
That was Ronald Reagan.
To fund their counter-revolutionary campaign.
That's Oliver North.
Where did that crack cocaine come from? How did it end up in the streets in the first place? Well, those are exactly the kind of questions that will have the nearest CIA.
Ooh. So this is kind of interesting, huh?
Cocaine abuse that had devastated California's most vulnerable Black communities. Some had said conspiracy. Some said good investigative work.
She was the head astrologer for Ronald Wilson Reagan, Just because she's so beautiful, she got away with so much.
Assigned about 17 reporters to pick apart everything Gary Webb was trying to report. One of the 17 referred to it as the Get Gary Webb team.
It's hard to do these kinds of stories. They're very difficult because of the reporting that's required, the going into the field, dealing with often unsavory characters, dealing with secret government sources. And to do all that work and then have the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times attack you and try to destroy your life, there's a special pain in that.
Good. You know, Father, the more important question is, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm alive. I'm here. You know,
Well,
and we're not going to let me do any investigative reporting. So I had to figure, you know, this is kind of pointless to hang around and work for a newspaper whose, you know, editors you didn't respect.
Anyway, supposedly he killed himself after they shamed him and nobody would hire him. And I guess that poverty and like, nobody listens to me anymore.
Tenía vistas de diferentes ciudades en las que se guardaban leones, tigres, lobos, zorros y toda clase de animales de cuatro patas. Pues, ¿qué opinan ustedes? Les voy a mostrar otras vistas donde parece haber un cierto ídolo coronando el centro. Por ejemplo, de esta imagen de Civitatis Orbis.
Hey, remember what I've been saying since like 2016, 2017 when I stumbled on this? This is a model of an eyeball. Our flat earth map is a model of the eyeball. We are living stones going to be put into a body of something and made of flesh now. For some reason. And it's an eyeball. No habla español, lo siento.
Un libro que contenía vistas de diferentes ciudades alrededor del mundo, contenía algunas. La ciudad de Tenochtitlán, ahí está muy desfigurada. Las tres coronas.
Double-headed Habsburg crown is
Ahí
everywhere.
está la bandera de Aragón en el centro. Los rostros
They would call
encadenados.
that Aragon. It's frustrating. I know Espanol can be tricky. What's this book say?
Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, "My father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done."
That's cool.
In the next year, 1955, to choose a national unity government. But Diem and South Vietnam and the United States refused to be bound by the Geneva Accords, and the national unity elections never happened. Diem, who became president of South Vietnam, eventually became a dictator. Now there were two Vietnams, a communist North Vietnam, whose capital was Hanoi, and a pro-Western South Vietnam, with its capital in Saigon. For their part, the North Vietnamese, the communists, never gave up the goal of a united Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh, and particularly his second-in-command, Le Duan, always intended to reunify the country by force if necessary, but they realized they were pretty weak after that war with the French. In 1959, however, reunification
He would look white. You had to break his nose off if he was a statue, though.
by force became the official North Vietnamese policy. They formed an irregular army, which came to be known as the Viet Cong, to operate in South Vietnam to destabilize the regime. This was in addition to North Vietnam's regular national army. The Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese armed forces are separate, remember that, but they were working toward the same overarching. Perfect subject for my style of deep dive video analysis. The subject has come up twice before in previous videos I've done in the past. Came up in the two-part series of deep dive videos I did in 2022 on the JFK assassination. Oswald acted alone, which I'll say more about in a moment. It also came up in my video made about a year ago about the Watergate affair. Watergate and its history are deeply connected to the war in Vietnam, so that's how we got there. So yes, I did make a series of videos delving deeply into the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and in those videos I presented the facts and the logical analysis that prove, beyond any reasonable doubt, that there was not a conspiracy to assassinate Kennedy in November 1963. There was one assassin, that being Lee Harvey Oswald, and he...
So you can tell where this usually goes, but every now and then they have to tell the truth because we know this was all fake. There's no way Oswald did that alone. But sometimes when the United States admits they've been caught,
he very clearly acted alone without help from others or on the orders of anyone else. Not the CIA, not the FBI, not the Mafia, not the Cubans, not the Beatles. Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated Kennedy alone. Now, as soon as I say that, I realize certain members of the audience are going to shut off this video in disgust and declare that I am insane, delusional, stupid, a bad historian, or being paid by the CIA, as if one of the main functions of the CIA is to pay people to make videos on YouTube. There's not much I can do about those people except to say, don't let the door get you on the way out and enjoy your cat videos. But for those of you who are actually interested in the facts, in the historical context and analysis of what happened in the Gulf of Tonkin in August 1964 and what did not happen, you may be surprised by certain things you learn here. The conspiracy narrative of this event, which I'll deconstruct at length toward the end of the video, is is heavily intertwined with JFK conspiracy fantasies, which is why I'm mentioning it up front. In fact, the Gulf of Tonkin is...
That's my theory. And let me go over what I think has happened here and what I've shown in the past. Now, the commander of that fleet at the Gulf of Tonkin that faced it was the father of Jim Morrison, the singer of The Doors, who they have pictures of, that was ready to go to West Point at one time. And then after that, the mafias from Asia kicked their ass in Vietnam, had his son sing a song that said, "Mother, I want to rape you. Father, I want to kill you," and then ended up dead on his birthday that was supposed to correspond with the day that the commander of the United States naval ship, the Maddox, that did all of that, Jim Morrison's father, retired and was presented with the gift of his dead son. Now, who's winning this war? The United States? Or did we try to flex our muscle after they let us fake that we saved the world and we were going to loan money in a fair and honest way, and then we didn't to the rest of the mob? And now it takes another 50 years for revenge. That's God's timing, people. That's God's timing. And this is payback for the Gulf of Tonkin.
Mentioned prominently in one of the most recognizable and widely known fantasies about Kennedy's assassination, that being Oliver Stone's criminally inaccurate film JFK from 1990. Highly recommend Edwin Moise's very in-depth study and colonizing Southeast Asia in the 1860s, eventually turning it into a colony called Indochina, from which the modern countries of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia.
Rebuilt Starfort much here in these pictures of now the white gods coming. Oh, we've got the food and we can feed you. We are the saviors of the world. Oh.
Cambodia
Thanks
were
for the
eventually
food.
carved. The period of modern Vietnamese nationalist resistance to colonialism got rolling in earnest after World War I. During the war, the French conscripted nearly 100,000 Vietnamese and sent them overseas to fight or to work as laborers. One of the Vietnamese nationalist movement's main figures was Ho Chi Minh, who was in isn't. The disconnect is between historians who know and have studied this material and non-historians, some of whom reject real historical analysis in favor of conspiracy theories. In any event, the facts demonstrate clearly that the Gulf of Tonkin conspiracy narrative is simply not true. First, Kennedy did not decide to withdraw from Vietnam. And second, Johnson had not decided to escalate it at the time of the Gulf of Tonkin incidents, much less...
All you have to do is believe them.
The whole campaign went pretty well for President Johnson. He and his campaign managers deftly reinforced the narrative they'd already spun about Barry Goldwater, that he was a dangerous and radical extremist with an itchy trigger finger who couldn't be trusted with nuclear weapons. 1 month after the resolution, on September 7th, 1964, NBC broadcast a 60-second commercial for the Johnson
You've heard about it.
its Monday movie show. The film they were showing was David and Bathsheba from 1951. This was one of the most infamous political commercials of all time. And here it is.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Wow. We got to go and let's see, what's that girl's name? It's the same name as my wife. So my wife wasn't a judge. Well, there she is, swearing in Lyndon Johnson. Federal judge from Texas. best known as sworn in to make him the president that day. That day she happened to be there. He said, go get her. She'll do it. I put her in office. That's right. All girls school, you know, she's there. She was ready to be there and take part in history. You know, met in law school. Georgie, they kissed and fell in love. Joined okay, make a better world. Recess appointment. Didn't even have to go through the interrogation thing. Nominated, put in office, boom, there to swear him in, you know. And then the Goldwater thing. Let's see. Well, did she have any big cases after that? Yeah, Roe versus Wade. She was involved in that first case, including that Roe versus Wade. When they passed it so that they could have abortions in the first trimester, and they passed it. What do they call that when it's the Republican? One Republican voted for it. Do you know who it was? Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater. Goldwater girl Hillary Clinton went there for Watergate, met Bill Clinton, and the rest is history. She changed to be a big-time Democrat to break that glass ceiling. It's all tied together, and I've been telling you this for years, and it's not going to stop. Psilocybin therapy, it's what could help people like my son, could have helped my father. I believe it's helped me. And since the 90s, it's been confirming that there is no more debate. There's only the evidence confirming that as of 2022, you know, it's the most commonly researched, you know, due to what? Why do they do it? Well, because of its safety and its low potential for abuse or dependence. People wonder what their brain is like after it's been poisoned for years. So there's a lot of sweating involved, a lot of dieting involved, a lot of getting your body right. And then what can my brain do? That's what some people teach is good. And the DEA knows it. And it's still, they keep that same schedule, acting like nothing, you know, nothing could ever change it, even though it's been around for a long time. Long time. But they had to put in their people to make it seem like, oh, Charlie Manson liked it. Timothy Leary likes Atlantis. You're going to go crazy. Oh, really? Okay. Here's that. Your brain on psilocybin. Is that right? That's what they say. You know, I've never had a scan of my brain rolling at that time. Here's that Bible verse for how long a marathon is. The one I wanted to show you that, you know, I could pick anyone. I've shown them all if I had more time. Therefore, having obtained help from God to this day, I have stood bearing witness both to small and great, saying nothing other than what both the prophets and Moses said was about to happen. And that was that Christ would suffer. And as the first to raise from the dead, would proclaim light to both our people and to the Gentiles. that light. He is that Zoe light. Wow, look at this. I guess, is it shifting gears?
Natural measurement that was uniform everywhere, that anyone could reproduce at high accuracy. So in 1824, England created a standard yard based on a pendulum.
1824. So how new is it? After the 1,000-year and the reaping and the reset of what, 1711? Because that's a made-up date. Their Julian Gregorian calendar is what they've decided on. And now that Russia's on board after World War I, everybody agrees with the Gregorian calendar now. But yeah, they were on the Julian calendar for a long time. And other calendars are still in play because they're still going like, what? Oh, you're on yes, we're on the Gregorian calendar too. And they keep going with their calendars.
Length, beating seconds in London at sea level in a vacuum, thus being a
So they understood what a vacuum was, and they were going to use it as the vacuum of space, which they say is mostly empty, to account for their 97% of dark matter, which isn't there because it was an ether, AETHER. Back to this time when Napoleon said, somebody figure out for France the meter, and then British, well, we don't like it. We're going to go this way.
Natural measurement, it can be recreated if lost or destroyed. And in 1834, it was destroyed in a fire when Parliament burned. Problem was the calculations used to create it were found to be erroneous. And by then it was well understood that gravity is not geographically uniform, and that standard was abandoned. Thankfully, copies of the previous 1760 yard were still available.
There you go.
From those, a new standard was made to which all measurements were standardized all the way until the Weights and Measurements Act of 1963.
Okay, that's pretty much right after the 1958 DARPA NASA STEM. I'm going to beat that big. Where's that dead horse?
Finally, lapped to final dimension. The entire process takes about a year. At the outbreak of World War I, the U.S. War Department declared Johansson's blocks as the standard of measurement for all war material. However, the German submarine blockade of neutral...
That was pretty fast. Dude, that's like a miracle that the Allies needed that, and then they got it.
Sweden caused near panic when additional gauge...
And it's like they never had this steel before. And now they can... Well, they had to make it flat and square, and that is supposedly one of the hardest things to do.
Ford had ensured the U.S. would never be short on gauge blocks again, and companies all over the United States involved in the war effort were buying them as fast as he could make them. And you know what?
What?
The blocks have an amazing property. If you carefully slide or ring them together, they'll actually stick together on the very precision lap sides. Is it because of intermolecular forces, cold welding where the electrons are crossing between the blocks? Or maybe because the atmosphere is crushing down on them and all the air is squeezed out? Or, I don't know. The debate rages on, and no one seems to know for sure, but it's probably a combination. The problem...
Wow, science is so smart, but then there's some things that, wow, I don't know.
What all other projects will be based on, and it's so foundational to machining. Precision isn't an accident and is the result of an amazing amount of...
You realize that they're claiming that there was no precision before, 1840. All of the buildings you see in the past with that alleged you couldn't put a razor blade in between those stones, used to be body parts. No accuracy. All those laid out star forts with no accuracy. All those sculptures, no accuracy until we got, yay, Henry Ford.
Work and investment over hundreds of years to get us to where we are today. The milling machines, lathes, measuring devices, and other tools we use in the home shop are direct descendants of the work.
So they could, and there's no conspiracies. The accuracy and grade, how they can predict the weather. They needed a flat plate. a reference plane so that finally the Henry Ford could sponsor that guy, and after a year or so, he's there. Look, I made these so flat they stick. That's what they call the mechanical gauge standards. Hand scraping. Any errors of flatness are removed by this hand scraping, since only stable, mutually conjugate surface shape is a plane. So anyway, the surface plate was first recognized, the need for it, in 1800. Nobody ever thought about, wow, we need a way to make a meter. But the meter goes back way earlier than Emperor Napoleon. So here's their jive on it, man. Before World War II, metal was the standard material used for surface plates. However, the war effort of various countries, they switched to granite. Vibrating, damping, they've got it all figured out, right? Recently, they want the credit. They did it.
Follow the chain of tools backwards. It's there. Your phone was made by machines which got their final precision from straight edges, which in turn got their precision from the surface plate. It's like bricks in a building. All bricks are relative to the first one that was laid. So it is with tools in the machine shop to the surface plate. They're in every machine shop and factory throughout the world, and they are regularly inspected, resurfaced when necessary, and certified to attest to their accuracy and serve as the final authority and foundation.
So wait a minute. Some of these very accurate buildings were built way before they had this accuracy, and their brickwork is spectacular. Who's going doing
with your
this?
Surface plate, you can make a straight edge to start a ruler. Now you have to mark it at regular intervals. What unit do you use?
Yeah. But what? Oh, that's more the surface plate stuff. There's that guy. This is that same video. Here's your last little bit.
100,000 possible measurements bugs me. Well, that's true. Only because they use the weasel word over. I figured pretty much straight away this way underestimates the possibilities. You don't even have to do any real calculations. Because this set allows us to make 10,000 measurements between each inch, just start figuring out how many full inches you can cover. If we add up just our inch blocks, 1, 2, 3, and 4, that's 10 inches. Which means that by combining those inch blocks with the smaller ones, we know right there we can get 10 sets of 10,000 measurements.
Wow, I can't believe that anything goes wrong anymore because we've got it perfect. We even know what a marathon is, a long distance foot race, 26 miles, 385 yards. That comes down to 42 kilometers, 195 meters. Now they got it with wheelchairs. Everybody can do it. There's 90-year-old people are setting, one 92-year-old girl did it in 7 hours, set a record. Oldest person ever. Way to go. Anyway, it's inspired by some ancient legend where a guy thought that they would think that they lost, and he ran to them and said, "No, we won," and he died. It's the legend that the Greeks love to put it out there because people love to think of themselves as an ancient Greek god, and they line up to, I guess only like 500,000 people can say that they are marathon finishers. That's not very many, but there they are. Hey, there's that lady in the green shirt that Boston Marathon conspiracy. Hi, runners. How'd you know to wave? Oh, somebody was saying, wave. Look at me. That's my team. They're running for Rwanda. They didn't get killed. They're a happy participant. And he died. And nobody was like, why are you naked? Well, because I run faster. I had to get here as quick as I could. Look at him go. Hey, old timer, give me 5. Marathon. Well, we might as well see them all now. What? Moonwalk? I don't think they're going to go 26.22 dressed in their pink bras. Come on, you can do it. I'll run with you, my friend. I'm lost. Where am I? Would you like a drink of water? This used to be one of my jobs, man. I was the guy sending these cups for Gohausen and Associates. I was the head of the fan club for the United States Women's National Team. I don't talk about my past too much because people will think I'm bragging. But anyway, yeah, I used to send the cups and the Gatorade mix, and for darn near a decade. That was a good job. I was vested in that company. I wouldn't be where I am right now without Christopher Gohausen. And I used to, they had a daughter named Hillary too. And she didn't like her name. I'd say, well, say it like Gohausen, Gohausen. And she laughed and giggled, but she was very serious. So here's your inventor of all the marathon race. Here you go. That doesn't look fake. 1 of 1. Hey, you did get too much credit. Anyway, what are we going to read here? French Jewish person. Any Jewish Masonic orientation, or don't they need it? Anyway, he got into this legend, decided that the Olympics need to run a marathon. We're going to have the Olympics. Let's do it. Worst tab ever. Hey. So a little bit about that Tower of Siloam thing. You know, because right now we're seeing these, these airplanes crash in other countries, and some hillbillies getting flooded by a hurricane in North Carolina, but it's western North Carolina. And it doesn't happen, some storming, some flooding. You don't live on the Mississippi. Anyway, Luke chapter 13, verse 1. At that time, some of those present told Jesus about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. To this he replied, do you think that these Galileans were worse sinners than all the other Galileans because they suffered this way? No, I tell you, unless you repent. So they didn't do this. Pilate didn't do that in Rome. That wouldn't have floated. Verse 3. No, I tell you, but unless you repent, you too will also perish. Or those 18 who were killed when the Tower of Siloam collapsed on them. Do you think they were more sinful than all the others living in Jerusalem? No, I tell you, unless you change your direction because your mind is going like, you know what doesn't work? You too, that means you also will perish, all of them. So anyway, wow. Steve Wonder, do you ever hear, not Steve Wonder, Steve Taylor. You know, once they realized that the Christians were going to do what they could to emulate the world, they started Sony bought Word, and they started kicking it out. And this was probably one of my favorite records there when I was like in the Bible college scene, you know, and trying to be cool. I had so many thin ties. But it was very, you know, this disco used to be a cute cathedral. And we know now that, don't they love to have their rave parties in the old big buildings? Because those were the big domed to hang that mirrored ball. What'd Steve say? Sunday needs a pick-me-up. Here's your chance. Do you get tired of the same old square dance? I think I did something about the do-si-do, and that was a white man's thing. And Henry Ford wanted people to do-si-do because he hated the jazz music so bad. Alamede is right now is one of the calls of square dancing. All join hands, another square dance term. Do-si-do to the promised boogie land. That's a square dance reference to heaven being a place where it's Christians going to have fun. Got no need for altar calls. Sold the altar for mirror balls. Do you shuffle? Do you twist? Because with the hot hits playlist, now we say this disco used to be a cute cathedral where they're chosen cha-cha every day of the year. Mickey does a two-step. Little church mice doing their thing. Bopping and bell tower rumba. But this is such a staged video that it obviously it has the feel of Golden Earrings, Radar Love, where they want to act like it's a live crowd or something. And there's a difference between the live crowd. Look, he's still performing that in 1988. He was rocking it. We'll look at, because there's a specific video I want you to see that just shows that. Here it is. Now, it's all set up. This is a Radar Love type. I don't know if it's the same crowd, but watch the energy. It's a new Christian energy. It reminds me of Bird is the word, where he was moving and singing. Because, like they said about that band Van Halen, that David Lee Roth wasn't a singer. He's an athlete entertainer.
It's showtime. Please welcome Steve Taylor and some band.
Church bells. Right off the bat, hit it. Now, when is it a setup? When they just happen to have the camera on the right place at the right time, even for as much as a fisted keyboard roll, because Christians are as cool as the world.
I wear the chosen cha-cha every day of the year. This disco used to be a cute cathedral. Where I only play the stuff you want to hear.
They're not in the world. No way.
Get me out of this last night. Officer, what do you expect? Got no rhythm.
How many takes do you think this took? There. You saw it. So the computers are into this. I wonder how they found out
Buenos
about it.
días, bienvenidos a Mente Abierta. Este es un pequeño video con algunas imágenes bastante interesantes. Aparece un socavón en Chihuahua, México. A través de redes sociales se da a conocer un mega socavón en la carretera del municipio de Buenaventura, Chihuahua. De acuerdo con la información que proporcionó Protección Civil del Estado, la lluvia y la humedad que se presenta en la región fueron las que originaron el deslave.
You know what? My friend Joaquin is from Chihuahua. I'm going to send him to this video because he knows me and he knows what I think about this. And this would be perfect because in the Espanol world, I feel like they're ready. I feel like everything's changing right now, and that the whole Salt Paco version of things might go. This go.
Producto
No, that probably
del ciclo
it's
de vida
not
humano,
gonna
por
happen,
así
is it?
decirlo. En otras palabras, con el tiempo producimos elementos, lo que incluye la suciedad.
I know you don't. You know, habla español, so
Un
you
tercio
don't
de
like
esta
it.
estructura se encuentra.
You speak Spanish. You know this language already. Importante. Oh, is that? Oh, that's too hard. You couldn't understand. That means important. It's importante, or muy importante. That's pretty hard too. It's almost, incomprehende. No comprehende. It's impossible for you to comprehend that. I get it. You don't know 4,000 cognates already, or you do, but don't want to admit it.
Actualmente por debajo del nivel del suelo. Adivina cuántos profesores
Maybe
de
you just
historia
haven't
podrían
been told.
decirte por qué. En realidad, todos probablemente te dirán que son.
Oh man, did he say problem? Anyway, they got a problem with their history, don't they?
¿Cómo era el área antes de que comenzaran a cavar? Uno tiene que disfrutar de la falta de respeto de esta sociedad que tiene que soportar sin saberlo.
You practically
Según
do have
estimaciones
to
modernas.
disrespect, the brain and everything. So, no good metal, no true story of Bessemer, the Bessemer process of how they needed to cut down all the trees to make the coal so they could get steel, cast steel, and the other high grades that they needed for their new war machine. We're going to bounce around on this one too.
Company records from the companies who were around at that time, you can find no evidence of it as well. And Bessemer's own autobiography makes no mention of it. And if you think about the claim for a minute, it kind of falls apart. At this point in time, Sheffield is making half of the world's steel every year, about 100,000.
Wow, that one town in formerly Rome, now, hey, thanks you Irish Druids and all you other yahoos. The feudal system has one town making half
tons of that is cast steel. So we're talking about a conspiracy involving tens of thousands of workers, hundreds of companies related to steelmaking across England, and not a single word from any of them. And if it was true, and it would have revolutionized the steelmaking industry, you make high quality cast steel for pennies. His autobiography is just painful. He had this massive, but
we'll remember we left off at 12 minutes if we wanted to come through. But what's this all about? Holding rags in their mouth.
Kind of getting off the ground in England. Edge tool makers knew what quality steel was back then. They were in awe of what was called Damascus steel, which was this layered steel that was made in the Islamic world using Indian crucible steel. But they didn't know how to make it. So they had access to what's called blister steel. They could get it from Spain, they could get it from Italy, there was a little bit made in England, they get it from Germany, that's what the good stuff was. Problem with blister steel is because the way that it's made, you have little flecks of impurities in it, and the carbon distribution.
I could break in, and maybe I will, because they're acting like all of this is brand new, and we can't go to the Bible, so I'm going to want to read Entering Through the Narrow Gate for sure. So I'll save that one. So the Bible's old. Okay, so the oldest book in the Bible is Job. Iron is taken out of the earth, copper is smelted from the ore. How cool is that? Surely there is a mine for silver and a place for gold that they refine. And I've shown you that they could make that. Remember that gold sword I showed last night? They claimed it was 2,000 years old and it still hasn't rusted because we don't know. Iron is taken out of the earth. Copper is smelted. That's from Job. It's old. And that whole thing about, building up gold, silver, and precious stones, and he's going to cleanse us by fire and all of that, remove our dross. That's from Isaiah. A lot of people like Isaiah. Let's see. The New King James says, I will turn my hand against you and thoroughly purge away your dross and take away all your alloy. It's hard for me to believe that these guys want me to believe their timeline. Like, look at us. We figured at the same time we're figuring out Darwinism and Blavatskyism and Quakerism and all the other nonsense craziness. We're figuring out iron and steel.
Which is what makes steel strong, was really uneven. So you get these random weak spots in it. Some analysis that was done in the late 1800s found that the distribution of carbon in blister steel could drop from 30 to 40% from the outside of the bar to the center of it. You can take it to the forge, you can hammer it, you can rework it. That's what the Germans did. And you can get some pretty decent edge tool steel out of it. So let's jump to the 1740s. This is a story a lot of us know. English watchmaker named Benjamin Huntsman. He figures out if he can get a furnace hot enough, and he uses the crucibles that the local glass makers are using, he can melt that blister steel completely. When he does that, you get the perfect distribution of carbon. You can get rid of those impurities. Because it's liquid, you can pour it into casts. So
nobody in the Bible knew anything about how to make chariots of iron, and spears and swords and okay.
You get the name crucible cast steel. And it's revolutionary. It's incredibly good steel. But what he realizes very quickly is that the only way to get good cast steel is to start with blister steel that's made with high grade, very pure Swedish iron. So
it has to be Swedish. Now, was this before Sheffield? Somebody was going to come up and go like, hey, you Swedish, nice job there with your spiral vortex city. Do you have any iron for sale? Because we have all these guys are the only ones that can make half of it in the world. Wow. And they have to believe it.
All the English and American plane makers start using this incredible steel right away, right? Nope, not even close. But that's a story that I'm going to tell in the next Working Wooden Planes newsletter. For this story, for this video, let's jump almost 100 years, like 1850-ish. Cast steel has been widely adopted. And Sheffield, at this point in time, is really the center of not just English steelmaking, but steelmaking in the entire world. What's also grown is pretty much everything about the crucible steel process. The crucibles themselves have grown.
Amazing how we've come into that. Now we can do the digital grinding and take credit for the meter and the everything.
Who likes to watch the furnace. It's usually a young kid. Then you've got the guy who monitors the crucibles. He's not just looking for when the steel is liquid. You also have to do a process called killing the steel. And that's when you let it sit long enough so that when you pour it into the mold, bubbles don't form. Then you have what's called the puller. And he's got to be strong enough to be able to lift 30-pound crucible full of 50 to 70 pounds of melted metal out of the melting hole. But he also has to have a delicate enough touch so that he does not crush the crucible. Because at this point in time, the crucible is semi-solid. This is one of the reasons that for the most part, this process was never automated. And then you have the teamer. Both he and the puller, their legs and their arm are...
Not never, but I guess until recently, now they can do it. And then they jump right up into like, hey, now that we're good at this type of steel,
more. It needs a different kind of steel. And this is where Henry Bessemer comes in. He's a self-taught entrepreneur. In 1856,
that's proven liar.
he comes up with this idea where you take pig iron, which is a fraction of the cost of that high-end Swedish iron, and using this process where you blow air through it, companies said that because you need cast steel tools to machine mild steel, in some places the demand for cast steel doubled because of Bessemer. This is a quote from a British government official in what used to be called the Ministry of Supply. By 1869, Bessemer was beginning to make inroads even in Sheffield, and soon Siemens' open hearth process arrived also, with its firmer reputation for reliability. Yet until the coming of the electric furnaces in the 20th century,
Okay, World War II didn't, or Civil War didn't work out. The French were planning and at the last minute didn't help the Confederacy, so they didn't get Louisiana back. So they started working on another plan almost immediately.
the small crucible and shear steel makers were not greatly affected by new processes. Cast steel was required for anything that needed a razor sharp edge, for anything that needed to be machined to a very high tolerance.
Follow this history. The reason that they're doing that is so they can make this kind of stuff.
Huge machines that were coming out of the Second Industrial Revolution, propeller shafts and crankshafts for huge ships. Cast steel was used to wrap the first transatlantic communications cable. It was used for armor-piercing shells.
There you go.
For the inner bores.
And once they got the cables laid, it was war is on. It was inevitable. They're building these ships. They were going to use them. If they had atomic weapons, they would have used them a long time ago.
Of massive guns. Firth & Sons did a casting for an 81-ton gun. Required 194 men and 628 crucibles. So that's the backdrop for what happens next.
What?
In 1880, Bessemer stands up in front of an industry group and drops this bombshell. He claims that half of all cast...
He combed his hair like that on purpose? This is just, you remember, it's all made up history. It's all...
Steel made in Sheffield is being made from Bessemer steel scrap, not Swedish iron. He's making two implications here. One, that Bessemer steel is not cheap. In fact, it's superior to Swedish iron. Number two, the Sheffield makers are hiding this fact from the world in order to keep steel prices artificially high.
Would they do that? Would anybody do that?
Of the country, but which may be refined into the expression that if you put his satanic majesty into the crucible, his satanic majesty will come out of the crucible. So Bessemer responds. He calls it a nasty kick at Bessemer Steel. Says he's going to provide evidence, but he never does. As far as I have been able to...
Yeah, they just let it go.
By the beginning of the 20th century, cast steel firms were still making edge tools and small castings. They weren't doing the big castings anymore. They switched to what is probably their most impactful role. And that was...
We can trace all of these steels from the rivets to the welding to the extrusion that I've shown you was what the race was for. Germany had technology they weren't sharing and they wanted it. So they muscled through the bombed out cities after the reaping. And here we are.
I was making new specialty steels. I was talking about high-speed steels and then a bunch of the new alloys that were coming out at the time. So carbon tungsten steel and chromium steel and silicone steel and nickel steel. Anybody in the aerospace industry will recognize that one. Almost all of them had been invented previously, but the cast steel industry was the first to perfect them and to sell them commercially. Okay, I'm going to start wrapping this up. I've been talking for way too long, but I want to hit two things first. One of them is the US, and the other one is the shortcomings of cast steel.
All right, let's do a Sunday closing here. We'll look in here. Okay, we looked at the dross and the alloy. Now here's a good advice from Matthew chapter 7, starting at verse 13. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to life, and only a few find it. You have to watch out for false prophets. That generation was warned. They come to you in sheep's clothing. Be good advice for us to watch out for too. But inwardly, they are ravenous wolves. Where is their fruit? Now, are there people out there who are so holy that they're saying anybody that is going to be on Salt Paco's team and is for a disciplined look at the benefits and uses possibly of psilocybin mushrooms? If they're against that, I think that's a bad fruit. Very bad. I want to remind people that there are many people. Well, verse 21 says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons and perform many miracles? Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. I never knew you. He knows his own. He's not making mistakes about that. But you're going to build your house on a rock or not. The words of Jesus are hard. They're not fun. A little bit better than the world. That's not it. Nor is it the goal. In chapter 23, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our father, we would not have taken part with them in the shedding of blood of the prophets. Thus, you witness against yourself that you are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. He's talking to a specific group of people at a specific time, because it was that wicked and despised generation that he came back. Verse 30 continues, saying, if we had lived in the days of our father, we would not have taken part. Thus you witness against yourself. So now then, verse 32, fill up then the measure of your fathers, speaking to them as clear as day, you serpents, you brood of vipers. How are you to escape being sentenced to hell? They chose Barabbas. Verse 34, therefore I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town. That's Apostle Paul. So that on you, verse 35 starts, it then continues, on you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel, not a Jew, to the blood of Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. There's no doubt there is only their going against the King of glory, because in verse 36 he says, truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. And it did. This was kind of hard. There are some born as eunuchs, some have been made eunuchs by others, and some choose not to marry for the sake of the King of Heaven. Let anyone accept this who can, because a lot of them just say, let them, they're eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom, and some have made themselves eunuchs. And some people are thinking, well, maybe I should just cut off my junk. Whoa, no. Absolutely not. Let's don't do that. That's language one. So this one I do have to look up and show you, not slow way, but this is probably, it's going to work out here. So we can see that these are two different. There are, that's a eunuch type thing, and this is a different word. So it looks like there is that. Don't cut yourself until we talk about this some more. If you're having any inclinations like, I'll show them who's loyal. Stop that. Now we talked in last night that's the same thing. Is this dialect? Earlier, before the Tower of the Babel, they had some languages. They had their language. I didn't know if there was all one language or not, but they had a language. Okay. So that's their language after their tongues. Plural. So some people will say, well, they weren't all of one language. Well, that's only used, this word is only used twice, and it's used in Genesis 10, but let's click on it and see if it's that same word used in Genesis 11. It has not. Because that would mean the Bible got like something that people love to make fun of. There's the Genesis 10. As you can see, it skips. It doesn't go here, where all of these other words mean the same thing that they have here. Speech. They were all the same speech. They had that in common. Not a dialect, not a tongue, charmer. Well, there you go. So that would, well, for me, an hour and 30 minutes, and had to start, a couple hours late because there was a lot more information that I wasn't quite sure how to present. But there, I think, and I do mean people like Paul Stopes and Theron, and Paul Stopes, coming out of nowhere with, I was doing mushrooms, and now I know the demons are Nephilim clowns, and who helped him get that word out? Conspiracy are us and others who still give it some credence today. It's wrong. It's so wrong. It goes against the people and the doctors and the science for thousands of years who are talking down a medicinal herb that could help my son and many others. People like myself who joined up to say, oh, I'm willing to risk my life for this country. I was a fool. But that's what we believe. That's what they believe. And until God changes this, that's what the salt of the earth will continue to believe until God gets all of his true sheep brought to him. Anybody want to debate me in a fair and honest way? Because that's the way it's going to be. Right here on this flat earth nation with its golden age past, because the mud flood was Armageddon. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We're one called, two chosen, three faithful to having your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakame.